Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the brutal, extremely uncomfortable mathematical reality of trying to buy a $500,000 home on a completely normal salary. You know the exact scenario, right? You're scrolling through real estate listings late at night, and every single house that doesn't look like an actual teardown costs $500,000. The kitchen has laminate countertops from 2003, the carpet is a highly questionable shade of beige, and yet the listing agent has the absolute audacity to call it a starter home. You're probably sitting there doing mental math, wondering if you somehow missed out on a massive promotion or if the entire market has just collectively lost its mind. Well, spoiler alert, it's not you, it's the math.
So, we're going to answer the big question today. Why does making what used to be a dream salary, 6 figures, still leave so many of us feeling fundamentally broke? We're going to calculate who can legitimately afford a house in this environment without turning their daily life into a complete financial stress simulator. Because let's be real, there is a massive, life-altering difference between the bank saying you qualify for a mortgage and actually being able to sleep soundly at night after you sign all that paperwork.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the $500,000 myth.
We are facing this crazy new baseline right now, the $500,000 starter home. In dozens of U.S. markets, $500,000 doesn't buy you a mansion, it buys you a 1,200 square foot box with a yard the size of a beach towel. Now compare that to reality. The median household income in America is currently sitting right around $84,000. To put that into perspective, we are asking everyday, normal earning people to somehow afford homes that cost an incredible 6 times their annual income. If that ratio sounds completely insane to you, well, congratulations, you're paying attention.
Moving right along to Section 2, the down payment trap.
$100,000. You know the old standard rule of thumb for buying a home, right? Put 20% down. Well, on our $500,000 starter home, that means coughing up a cool $100,000 in cash. Not borrowing from retirement accounts, not theoretical equity, $100,000 of actual liquid cash in the bank.
But here is the stark reality check. We just established that $100,000 requirement. Well, the median savings account balance for an American household right now only holds about $8,000. Think about that gap. For the average family looking at that starter home, you aren't just a little bit short. You are $92,000 short before you even walk up to the front door.
Now you might say, okay, I'll just buckle down and save it. Let's actually run that math. If you're earning that median $84,000 salary and you somehow manage to aggressively save 10% of your gross income, which frankly almost nobody is pulling off right now, you're saving $8,400 a year. At that specific rate, it is going to take you 12 straight years to hit that down payment. And honestly, that assumes housing prices miraculously don't go up over the next decade, which, come on, we know they absolutely will.
So, since saving for 12 years is basically impossible for most people, buyers usually put down 5 or 10% instead. But the second you do that, bam, you've just unlocked PMI, private mortgage insurance. It's essentially a $200 to $400 monthly poverty tax. It's a penalty fee you pay every single month simply for the crime of not being wealthy enough to have a full 20% down payment. And the real kicker here, this insurance protects the bank if you default. It does not protect you. So you're literally starting your homeownership journey from a position of immediate, recurring financial punishment.
Which brings us to Section 3, the true monthly cost.
Let's stack up the real costs of the monthly mortgage if you somehow manage to scrape together that 10% down payment. The absolutely crucial point here is that a mortgage payment is never, ever just the principal and the interest. If you put 10% down, which is $50,000, you're looking at a $450,000 loan. At current interest rates, your principal and interest sits at roughly $2,850. But wait, we have to add conservative property taxes at $500 a month. Homeowners insurance, which is literally skyrocketing right now, adds another $300. Then there's the 1% maintenance rule for when your water heater inevitably explodes at midnight on a Sunday. That's $417 a month. Plus our $300 PMI penalty. Add it all up, and your true monthly housing cost skyrockets to roughly $4,367. And remember, that is assuming nothing major breaks.
To actually pull off a $4,000 plus monthly payment without drowning, we have to look at traditional financial rules. Most advisors will tell you not to spend more than 28% of your gross income on housing. To comfortably hit that target, you need to make roughly $187,000 a year. Even if we use the absolute maximum limit banks will approve you for, the super lenient 43% debt-to-income ratio, you still need to be pulling in $150,000 annually just to scrape by.
And here is the cruelest punchline of this entire explainer. 80% of American households literally cannot afford a baseline starter house under any reasonable financial standard. Only about 10 to 20% of households make that $150,000 minimum. This isn't an opinion piece. This is just the math being incredibly mathematically unforgiving.
Let's humanize this data a bit in Section 4, the six-figure case study.
So let's look at a hypothetical upper-middle-class family. We'll call them the Johnsons. Their $160,000 gross income leaves them with about $9,500 in monthly take-home pay. When we break down their budget, housing devours a staggering 46% of their money. That completely shatters the recommended 28% rule. Factor in 2 car payments, insurance, and gas because, let's face it, suburbia isn't walkable. Add in student loans, healthcare, groceries, and utilities, and those slices eat up the vast majority of their income.
After all those basics, they are left with just over $1,500 for literally everything else in their lives. We haven't even touched clothing, kids' field trips, medical copays, or building an actual emergency fund. And remember, this isn't irresponsible spending. They aren't out buying jet skis or taking lavish European vacations. They're just trying to live a normal life, yet they are quite literally one unexpected expense away from absolute disaster.
And this perfectly illustrates the creeping, slow-motion disaster of being house poor. Month 1, sure, you survive by cutting back on eating out. But by month 4, the car brakes die, and because your budget is zeroed out, that $800 goes straight on a credit card. By month 7, the AC breaks in the dead of summer, forcing you to finance a $3,500 repair. By month 9, if someone's hours get even slightly cut at work, the entire house of cards collapses. You essentially become a prisoner in your own home, stressed out of your mind, working constantly just to pay for walls you can't even enjoy.
Now let's look at the bigger picture in Section 5, the systemic failure. So why is this happening to us? Look, we need to understand that this isn't about you failing to budget properly or buying too much avocado toast. Home prices have completely and entirely disconnected from income reality over the last generation. Since 1990, home prices have exploded by roughly 400%. Meanwhile, median household income has only grown by about 180%. This massive gap means the math quite literally cannot and will not work for the median earner anymore. What was highly achievable for previous generations has basically morphed into a luxury item.
The harsh reality is that the system doesn't care about the math. Look at how the game is rigged. Sellers want top dollar. Banks are perfectly happy to approve buyers at a dangerous 43% debt limit because they get their money. Real estate agents naturally encourage you to stretch your budget because their commission depends entirely on closing the deal. The entire ecosystem is designed to get you into the house, but nobody in the transaction has any financial incentive to ensure you can actually survive the mortgage long term. No one profits when you say, actually, no thanks, I can't afford this.
So what do we do? Section 6, opting out of the game.
Let me give you permission right now to do something incredibly radical in today's society. You can just choose not to play. Let's be as direct as possible here. If you are looking at a $500,000 starter home and your household income is south of 140 grand, you need to stop. Just stop stretching. Signing those papers will likely dominate and completely ruin your next decade, no matter what the bank cheerfully approves you for. The numbers simply do not care about social pressure, and they definitely don't care about your Instagram-ready kitchen dreams.
There is a vital mindset shift to remember here. Real wealth is freedom. It is not equity you can't access because you're trapped by the very asset that's supposed to be making you wealthy. At the end of the day, having a healthy margin in your budget, being able to invest consistently, and just sleeping soundly at night without a knot of anxiety in your stomach is far more valuable than being financially trapped by your own four walls.
Look at your alternatives and see how this builds your true financial health. It is perfectly okay to look at these brutal numbers and decide that simply renting and investing the difference is the smartest move for you. Or maybe you hunt for a $350,000 house, even if it means a longer commute. Maybe you relocate entirely. Acknowledge that the market is warped right now. You are not failing at adulthood just because you refuse to financially drown yourself over some granite countertops.
So before you sign away your future, ask yourself this. Is purchasing this $500,000 house actually going to bring you freedom, or is it just wrapping you in a very, very expensive cage? Run your real numbers, be brutally honest with yourself, and remember, there is absolutely no trophy for being house poor. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer today, and stay smart.